Hey, welcome to Jeremy Snell's recruitment training. If you're looking to deepen your capabilities, if you're seeking to improve your productivity and your performance, this is the channel for you. In every episode, I will unpack practical and tactical things that you can do to help you to think with greater clarity, make better decisions, and ultimately make more money. Feel free to subscribe, feel free to like and to comment. And now let's get on with today's topic. Hello, and welcome to the episode. In this episode, I'm going to share with you what I would consider to be the holy trinity of things we should truly be thinking about and focusing our discovery questions on when we are conducting our business development and our sales activity. These are things that we can reflect in outreach, that may be digital outreach. You ping a message to somebody on LinkedIn. I'd want you thinking about these three things. You drop an email to somebody, perhaps you put them into a sequence using something cool like Apollo. I'd want you thinking about these three things. And if you're doing sales calls and you're having conversations with prospective customers, and I think that goes just as much as it does for candidates as it does for clients, I'd want you thinking about these three things. Because the more fluency you have with these three things, the better the quality of your questions, the more engaged you become with the real things that your customers are looking to be able to fix, and ultimately it increases your value. So this holy trinity of three. The holy trinity of three is made up of problems, symptoms, and the impact or the implication of these things. And on the face of it, it seems really simple, right? So let's say we consider ourselves to be vendors of a service, right? That sounds a little bit too like hoity-toity. We sell solutions. We create solutions for people who perhaps have dissatisfaction in their job. We provide a solution for them that helps them to be able to identify the right place to work, where to be able to trade their time for money. Or we provide solutions to companies. And those companies may be going through a process where they are hiring people, and perhaps there are challenges or issues on that journey to be able to hire, which is causing them headaches. Or perhaps they're not currently hiring, but they can reflect back on recent exercises and in hindsight start to think about what worked and what didn't. So if these are the things that we sell, then what we're looking for is problems. Now, the interesting thing is when we talk to a prospect and we talk to them about what they consider to be their problems, what they identify as problems may not actually be the true problems. What they might talk about are symptoms. And symptoms tend to be the things that they're painfully aware of, right? But there is a root cause somewhere hidden behind it, which is the problem. And if they're staring at the symptoms and they're getting frustrated at the symptoms and it's starting to cause them issues that might look like emotional turmoil that is the impact of the symptom, they may not have slowed down enough to really look at what is the root cause of the issue here and what can we do to deal with root cause rather than simply try and fix the symptom. Now, I appreciate that me walking through that here in this episode of the podcast may not give you entire clarity, so let me see if I can bring this to life a little bit with an example. So I'm going to do my very best to bring to life this example where I'm going to role play with myself, micro role plays, right? So I become a recruiter in sales mode and I'm talking to a prospect and I say, when you reflect back on your recent hiring campaigns, what do you feel in hindsight have been the biggest problems that you've faced? And then let's think about that prospect who might say, well, on our recent hiring campaign, we went out to market to hire 6 engineers and it did take slightly longer than we'd anticipated. However, we hired all 6. Only 4 of them stayed with us beyond the end of the first year. So the problem is actually getting people to stay. And because the problem is getting people to stay, it's really important that we engage with a recruitment agency who has a genuine understanding of that and can reflect it with their rebate period. So perhaps this client has decided the problem that we have when we hire is that we make hiring decisions, people join us, and then they leave before we actually see full return on investment of the salary that we paid, because they're gone within the first 12 months. And if a third of the people who we hire leave within the first 12 months, we never fully get our team up to speed and full capability in terms of productivity, because there is always new people who are part of that mix. So I hope you're with me in the way that I'm describing that. So ultimately they're saying the problem is people don't stick around for long enough. Now this actually is a symptom of a problem as opposed to being the problem. If we unpack what could be the problem which is underlying the symptom, perhaps there is a challenge inside that business in terms of how they scope a role, how they actually determine what is the profile of the right hire, and how do we ensure that we are attracting people who not only want to join us to do the immediate mission, but long term want to become part of the fabric of our organisation. So maybe their problem is they're giving little thought to actually defining the person who they wish to hire, and thinking about what does this person actually need to be looking for in terms of aspirations to want to be able to stay with us, rather than selling them the current project and maybe only holding their attention for a shorter period of time because the role itself isn't sticky enough relative to the candidates that they're meeting. So one problem could be the quality of their definition of person specification or their definition of the role. Second issue could be the clarity with which they are communicating that to their agency partners, and how they are ensuring that the agencies are actually assessing for the right things when they go to market. Because perhaps, and let's say only perhaps, because surely this doesn't happen in today's modern world, but perhaps they just like emailing them a job description from an HR or a talent department and say, go find us these. And because there isn't enough detail in the job description that really brings to life the profile of person that they're looking to hire, it simply has a list of experiences that the person needs to have gathered. And it may say very shallow things like minimum 5 years experience of developing products. You know, it might be like 5 years experience of working within a Java-based environment developing e-commerce platforms. And by definition, if the person has got less than 5 years experience, then they're probably not right. And if they've got more than 5 years experience, then they may be even better for the job than our minimum hiring standard that says 5. Which is never a great hiring standard and shouldn't be something a recruiter accepts as an instruction. Or maybe they're saying needs to have a demonstrable track record of working in teams, or needs to be able to prove a troubleshooting mentality to be able to deal with bug fixes, right? So it just becomes a very experience orientated thing, which makes it relatively easy for the recruiter to go to market and play what I would call buzzword Boolean bingo, to be able to identify profiles of people who match the job description. But all of the matching is really taking place at a very shallow level, because it is CVs of candidates being matched to job descriptions on behalf of a business. And the business may not actually feel as though they're getting the quality of people that they need for the project. And they're blaming the agencies for their inability to be able to find people who are good enough, without recognizing that it's how they've chosen to instruct. And they might even get quite uppity with these agencies if those agencies decide to reach out to hiring managers to get clarification on what really matters. And they're told, you're not allowed to talk to the hiring managers. And because they're banned from talking to the hiring managers, the business never actually succeeds in being able to meet the people that really they deserve to meet if they'd have put a bit more thought into how they actually brief their partners. Or maybe the third problem might be that those people who are responsible for interviewing the people for the job are very good at interviewing engineers. They're very good at understanding somebody's biography, very good at being able to assess their skill set, maybe even really good at being able to assess their capability to be able to deliver, but perhaps they're not as good at being able to identify things such as attitude, behaviour, true motive. You know, what actually is this person looking for? So people are hired based upon their skills and their experience, but they end up either being let go because of their behaviour or attitude, or they move on because of their motive and their aspirations. So when there are multiple places that could be identified as being root cause, i.e. the problem, as a salesperson, our job is to take what the prospect is saying they think is the problem, that is actually a symptom, unpacking it with them with some questions to understand a bit more about where they feel root cause may be coming from. The chances are the client hasn't really identified what root cause is, or they may have misdiagnosed what root cause is, and they've decided the problem is the agencies that we're working with. The problem is the candidates that we're looking for don't exist. The problem is, and they're at a bit of a blank, because they're overly fixated on the symptom, which they keep on staring at, knowing that it's an issue. They're getting into higher and higher levels of emotional turmoil in terms of the impact that the symptom is actually having on them and their ability to do their job, and the level of consistency that it is creating or inconsistency that it's creating in their process, and not really investing enough time to identify the problem. So when we get good as a salesperson, we recognise the relationship between those three things in the Trinity: the symptoms, the problems, and the impact that it has. The things that your prospects have the greatest amount of familiarity with are the symptoms and the impact. Very rarely do they have familiarity with the problem. Yet classically we're told by the gurus on LinkedIn and many people in sales training that we need to showcase the problem that we fix and then share the solution. Now, my experience is very few people have got a fluent understanding as to what the problem is, otherwise they would have fixed it. Most of the time the problem is hiding. Most of the time the problem is undiagnosed, but the symptoms reveal themselves every time they hire. And because the symptoms reveal themselves every time we hire, we need to get better at being able to show them. If you suffer from these from time to time, and it is having an impact on you in this way, and you've yet to truly diagnose what root cause is, perhaps if we were to invest some time together and over a 10-minute conversation, help you to be able to work out what you need to do to be able to improve things. Do you know what I mean? It's that whole, let's be less problem orientated, let's be more symptom sympathetic, and let's be a little bit more impact aware and start to be able to guide our prospects on a journey to help them to be able to make better decisions. Because ultimately as salespeople, that's our job, right? If we could relabel so many of the things in recruitment, one of the things that I would change is to change calling it from being sales to calling it coaching. Our job is to coach our prospects, to coach our clients to be able to make the best decisions possible that they can for themselves, their teams and their business. A good coach asks questions. A good coach helps them to reflect on what they've been learning on their journey and what they could potentially do different. And on occasion, there may be moments when there is a need to be able to share an idea, or to perhaps be able to re-steer them in a different direction with our questions. But I think it was Ronald Reagan who said, if you find yourself having to do explaining, then you're probably actually losing. Like the moment that we have to explain stuff, the danger is the other person is going to shut down. So to help us to be on the best of our game, to help us to be of maximum service to the clients that we want to work with, it's the quality of questions that we ask. And remember people, those questions need to revolve around their perceptions as to what the problem is, but for us to have fluency to recognise it's probably a symptom. And every time we hear something that they think is a problem that we can see as a symptom, the simple follow-up question of, what do you feel is root cause of that? Or how do you think that happens? Or what do you think the main driver for that is? And something that could really help you to have around you with all of your outreach, telephone conversations, sales meetings, digital outreach, create a SWOT sheet, create a cheat pack where you have a single sheet of paper that has a list of symptoms, it has a list of options of root cause, and then it has a list of the implications. So that as you are engaged in conversations, as you are crafting your outreach, you're being as agile as possible to show the level of empathy that's required for them to believe that you actually get what it's like to be them. Just because you're a specialist in your marketplace doesn't mean that you are the automatic choice. Just because you've been doing what you've been doing for a long time, it doesn't make you the automatic choice. That would be like saying a candidate with 10 years Java experience is automatically better than one with 7. And if you're out there saying, I've been working in recruitment for over 5 years and I specialise in this market, it doesn't actually have any evidence that helps the other person to really believe that you know what you're doing. And what shows them you know what you're doing is the quality of your questions. What helps them to believe that you have a shared agenda to help them is your understanding of those symptoms and those implications, and your willingness to help them to be able to identify that true root cause. Because picture for a moment that client who says, hey look, we are currently hiring, however it's really important that agencies understand our need for an extended rebate because of our experience and having been burnt by agencies in the past. Imagine that as language. Having been burnt by agencies in the past, who've placed people here, who've then left within the first 12 months. We have felt aggrieved at paying those fees. Burnt by the agencies, one feels they may have burnt themselves based upon their either inability to be able to scope the role or their inability to create consensus amongst a hiring collective as to actually what they're looking to hire and how to be able to ensure it's going to stay, or they've been a victim of how they've instructed agencies, or they've become a victim as to how they insist on telling the vendor on what they should be charging because of an experience that they've had with somebody else that they think sells the same thing, or they've become a victim of working with agencies who have done the best that they can based upon the briefings that they've been given in the confines of the terms that were created by the relationship that was dictated by that organisation, whether it was HR, talent, the C-suite, or the hiring managers themselves. But you picture that client who says, we need to talk about your rebate period because having been burnt in the past by working with other agencies and having hired candidates who've left within the first 12 months, we need to see that there is a greater guarantee in place. Well, let's fix the real problem. How about if we help you to fix the real problem and we reduce the number of people who leave? Would that be more valuable than the money you save by negotiating fees at the beginning, or your perceptions of value of at least getting some form of clawback on somebody who's left and not delivered any productivity and you still find yourself in a position of hiring? But that takes a certain type of recruiter to be able to recognize what true root cause is, to see the smoke screen of the claim that the symptom has been caused by the agencies, and to work in conjunction with that business to help them to be able to improve long term what fundamentally is going to make the biggest difference to their organisation, whether they continue to work with that agency long term, or they take some of those ideas and they take some of those structures and continue to use them over the coming years with whichever vendors they choose to engage with, even if they start their own internal talent team. Because there is a very small percentage of recruiters out there who would zone in on the root cause of a business's request for an extended rebate period, rather than having a debate about the quality of candidates that are found, to have a presentation prepared to talk about the legacy of their agency, the depth of their specialism, and the roster of clients that they've worked with in the past who have satisfactorily managed to hire people who stick. Because if truly we sell solutions, we've got to make sure that we fix the problem. And the problem ain't people are leaving. The problem is hidden behind that as being the root cause that you and I both know is only going to be discovered through high quality questions. And it can't become something that we assume because, having diagnosed it in one company, we highly anticipate that our diagnosis will lead to the same discovery. The client needs to feel the diagnostics. The client needs to feel the quality of your bedside manner in your attentiveness to ask the questions to start to feel the big difference. So look, The most important thing that I want you to take away from this, if anything, like you could take away nothing if you want. You might be sat there like spitting bits of sandwich at your computer screen as you listen to this, telling me how wrong I am in what I'm saying. But really, if you're going to take anything away from this, it's the relationship between those three things in the Trinity. The symptoms, the problems that cause them, and the impact that it has on the people who we interact with, who day to day have to live with the outcomes that are generated from their hiring process. Yes, there may be competitors out there who are a bit sloppy. Yes, there may be competitors out there who agree to a 6-month rebate because that's what the client wants. And yes, there may be clients out there who think they've now fixed the problem, but all they've done is they've taken some headache tablets to cure the migraine, rather than going for a scan to identify what is the root cause of this consistent pain, and should there be something else that I'm focused on curing, rather than the surface level analgesic care that I'm putting at the point of requirement, which is whenever I hire. So I trust that this makes sense to everybody. You know where to find me if you've got any questions, and I would love any feedback that you could give. Any reviews that you want to be able to post alongside this podcast would be greatly appreciated by me, and greatly appreciated by others who are thinking about should I or should I not press play. So as always, work hard with this, have fun with it, and perhaps see you on another episode soon. Hey, thank you for watching. If you want to continue to get access to more high quality training and coaching ideas to help you to stay inspired as a recruiter, make sure that you like, make sure that you subscribe, and check out the description below for relevant links to tools, frameworks, and other ideas to keep you moving forward. And I look forward to seeing you on another one very soon.